Hear your ideas. So first off, what would people be thinking at this point? 20 acres. What are you thinking of putting on there?
Hotel.
A hotel.
Where is it located? Where is it located?
Yeah, location.
Yeah. I can't reveal this. No. What I want to do is kind of not give you too many details, because sometimes with details people narrow their thinking down, and it's often a case of if you look at planning or applications that are out there, some of them are very standard, and it's not so, bless you, and it's something that I'm wanting to do maybe slightly differently. So if you assume that there's a good demand for most things, we're going to go with hotel first of all. How big a hotel? The whole thing a hotel? Are we talking Disneyland?
No, maybe not, but leave some parking space.
Hotel and car parking. Do you know the size of a car parking space?
No idea.
Used to be 4.8 metres by 2.4, but now cars don't fit in that, so it's got to be bigger. But then you need a turning circle as well.
Supermarket.
A supermarket. How big? A massive one?
Yeah. Tesco Superstore type thing.
Typically for big sites. I don't know, what's the sentiment at the moment? Are supermarkets going for big stores again? Or are they kind of holding back? I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes one of the things I hear about supermarkets is that supermarkets are experts at buying land, and often sit on land for a long time in areas that they want, and they'll sit there for ages until they get the planning permissions and what have you. But I've put it down because you never know. You never know, and it could be, so as they say, it's just the size that matters. What else?
Retail outlet.
Retail outlet, what are you thinking? One?
No, like a Crown Point kind of scenario, and as the similar care, that kind of.
So good selection of units and
Car parking in the middle there.
Car parking in the middle. So you're looking at a site where people come in and you've effectively got the properties around here.
Yep.
The parking in the middle. Okay, all 20 acres?
No. Personally, I'd be sectioning it off. You could have a residential section, you can have a retail section, you can have a hotel in there as well. With 20 acres, you've got plenty of scope.
It all depends, doesn't it, on what the local plan says from the council.
Absolutely.
For residential, commercial.
We're just thinking outside the box a bit at this moment.
Okay, so no one's thought of a zoo?
Pet cemetery.
Pet cemetery.
A solar
Do you know what? A pet cemetery. Do you know? That's going right to the top, is that? How do you spell it? Cemetery. Does that look right? There you go. I'll write it smaller so you can't tell. Pet cemetery, that's really interesting. I knew of someone who was trying to get planning permission, kept getting knocked back for any and every scheme that they did, and they ended up doing it as a burial plot, and they made far more money. And the tenants were pretty quiet, as he said.
solar farm.
A solar farm.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Does anyone have, I was asking for help, does anyone have contacts for people that have been involved in solar farms or anything like that?
I used to work.
Liam?
Liam used to
You
run
used
a
to-
solar.
Do some work for GMI, and they were in fitting solar to rooms, and it was just why not?
Just had lots of arguments at home with a company called solar farm in there where I live. You do their contacts.
That'd be great. I'll take those as a break. Thank you. Be interesting, because I know the market changed with solar, didn't it? With the RHI and
Yeah,
what have you.
the money you get from the government's moved, they keep taking it down because they've actually got enough power in place for it. So the amount of solar and wind means that the rebates they're giving are lower.
And did anyone see that for the first time more than a quarter of our energy consumed in the country was from renewables?
Oh yeah.
It was one day this summer. It was half of it.
There you go. Half of it.
Because it was a windy, sunny day.
A windy, sunny day. Hey?
Great for a perfect winter's morning that's got no wind and no sun, really.
Yeah, there you go. So I bet they danced a jig and then had a look at those Chinese nuclear power plant contracts. Okay, what else? So we've got some good thing. Could the solar be combined potentially with any or all of the buildings in there?
Absolutely, yeah.
What else?
If there was a residential bit, you could offer on cheaper electricity.
Yeah.
Mixture of industrial units and offices.
Industrial, yeah, because it's next to some other industrial, a good mix there.
Retirement residential homes for old people.
What sort of thing are you thinking
Like,
there?
cottages.
Okay, so more of a residential rather than a care home. So the suggestion was
Home, like,
it was more extra care housing. Extra care housing scheme. If for those that know, it's kind of you live but you have supported, so people that come round. So extra care housing.
And
What else?
that could be mixed with a straight residential kind of area, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
As residential grows, you need primary schools.
I don't know what the situation is at the moment, but it seems like they don't have enough schools at the moment in some areas.
Well, lots of them are going from 1, 2 to 3 form entry, so schools are going from 400, 500 to 700, 800 to keep class sizes down to 30. So, you know, there's the schooling. There's big issues on in certain areas.
There's got to be some funding for that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that there'll be some issues around because presumably the government are the ones that's going to need to fund it.
Well, you've just got kids hanging around all the time, haven't you, in a school? You know, that's one of the problems. But that's interesting, something like that. What about anything else?
A sports club, or a sports facility.
What about a health centre?
Health centre, yeah.
Health centre as in for doctors and those sort of collective things.
Certainly a call for dentists, aren't they?
Cluster of HMOs.
It's a big cluster, 20 acres. Yeah, you don't want to spread them out too much.
Well, no,
Can't
but then
cover a
you've got a
cluster.
sports facility to go with it, add a church on and a school.
All right, here's a question for you.
Maybe a
If you were
college.
purpose building HMOs, what size would you build them? What would be your preferred size of building?
6 beds, you don't need planning.
Depends where you are.
Yeah, the regulations are probably all going to come in.
My son's in the town.
Oh, sorry, HMO, house of multiple occupation. So this is where people share certain facilities, so either kitchen, bathrooms, something like that. Great for populations that are coming and going a bit, or where people are on short-term projects, short-term employment, as well as a great starter to get out of wherever you are and sort of mix with other people. Okay, so you could have purpose-built HMOs. What else?
Lots of flats.
Just blocks of flats. When you say a block of flats, how many in there?
15, 20?
And really, just if you go, depends how high you want to go. You can build them as tower blocks. You're just going to build them as
Depends
low
on local
rise.
planning again, doesn't it?
Yep.
Is it near an airport?
If not, let's build them.
Can you fit an airport in 20 acres?
It's very long and thick.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's only 8 yards wide. It's also known as a pavement.
Sounds like you're building a country now, Nigel.
Yeah, taking over. Okay, that's really interesting what people are thinking. Which you've seen a lot of suggestions. Which would you be going to put down first to go and have conversations with? Any particular favourites in here?
There's a need for housing, isn't there?
A need for housing. There always appears to be a need for housing, hence the demand and the prices keep going up. So there's got to be. So we've got flats, we've got HMOs, and we've got a kind of residential normal. So would that make up your scheme initially?
Big chunk then.
Big chunk of it. Okay. Here's a question for you, because no one's actually said anything. What's your actual strategy? Are you looking to develop this and sell it? Are you going to hold it? Or are you going to do a mix?
Mix.
So what would you buy and sell, and what would you keep and why?
Sell the houses because people need houses and a lot of people want to try and buy them. So if you're buying them, you can, on that scale, help to buy probably would kick in.
So houses, you'd sell.
Yeah.
Who else would sell?
HMOs you might want to keep.
Who would mortgage them and take them out?
Depends on the numbers, then.
20
Okay.
acres of rental property. So
Yeah,
all the rental
wouldn't it?
properties in one place.
It is. It is. So what about any of the other? Nobody's really going for office or places like this. If you think about where can people meet? You know, what do people like doing? Is there a need at the moment for offices of a more flexible nature where you don't want long-term contracts? Hot desking? People seen those sort of things?
But 20 acres is big enough to have a degree of
All of that.
Yeah.
like your Costa coffee with some office plus convenient living. And a football field.
And the football
You never
net.
need to get in your car. You could have a short bus just run you around there the whole site.
It's almost like a mini village, isn't it?
And perhaps that's it.
Mm.
Perhaps that's exactly it. You've all sort of spoken about bits, and on 20 acres, perhaps you can afford to put in an awful lot of those.
Yeah.
Because what do planners want? They want people in houses, but then what else do they want? They want
A community.
things to support where they are. They don't want suddenly 500 people having to get into cars to go 2 miles to the nearest shop.
You'd have to look whether there's enough hospital in the location to take that many people as well.
So the infrastructure.
So some support services, could it take
Fire
it?
station.
What is it with fire stations? What do they say about fire stations and where they are? Have you heard that one? It tends to be in the older stock, lower value, lower earning areas. So if you were looking to get into cheap housing, find out where your fire station is and look in the streets around there, because historically that was where more fires occurred. So they tended to put them there. So there you go. There's a little present for you. Thank you, Kevin and Dave Siegel. So that's on that one. Okay. Interesting, very interesting. And what would you want to have in place in order to move this forward? What's the key thing?
Funding.
Funding. Absolutely. So if, I'll be passing a hat round later, so if you want to chip in. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're thinking, and see if it kind of fits with anything that you're thinking. So as an aerial view, if that's, excuse the awful thing, you've got a smaller plot here, and then the bigger one here. It's you might not be thinking it, but it is not to scale. And one of the things that, so this is the main busy road. Here is the industry down here, and then you've got residential sort of going that way. Okay. Thoughts for us? No one mentioned it. Oh no, someone did. Drive-through. Drive-through for coffee and what have you. I've got some stats as to the size of a drive-through. So Costa only want half an acre. Starbucks 0.4 of an acre. So it still leaves you an awful lot of space, doesn't it? KFC, they even tell you how big it is. So 0.45 acres, 246 square metres or 282 square metres, and they either want 30 or 40 spaces. So these guys tell you exactly what they want. Nobody mentioned a tennis court, but for those of you who are curious, it's 36.5 metres by 18.2 metres if you were wanting to build one. Okay, what we're thinking here is a drive-through on this prominent corner with then some retail units and then affordable one-bed housing above on this side. In here, some further units with hotel above, backing onto a leisure facility there, and here these are gates to a gated community. And that would be potentially all retained and owned and rented. So this would be an exclusive, looking at 45 to 50 plus, so it'd be restricted. And in there you would have lots of facilities, so you would have the tennis courts, and you would have the swimming pool, leisure complex in there.
How does that fit, Nigel, with affordable housing? Where anything above 15 units in Leeds, depending on where it is, 30% has to be social housing.
Yeah, so this is what we're going to be building here, and we're going to try and balance that. But it's a combination of this site actually has planning on it that was put through just as to get planning through it, and it was a very dull scheme. But it's like anything, it's in negotiations, isn't it?
So what's the industrial side like and the other housing? I mean, you're talking about a significant...
You've got a wood down here. This is all open land that's semi-protected, and in here we would, the scheme, so trying to negotiate it with lots of trees, woodland, and try and have a different feel to it. But one of the aims that we're trying to do is have those houses where they are zero cost to live in them. I don't mean the rent or the mortgage or something like that, but that's too much. But aiming for zero to actually heat it and run it.
Zero carbon emissions.
Yeah, I mean even potentially a net gain, but the idea behind that, there's several ideas. One is if we're holding this and running this and we're renting this out, and the reason that we want to hold it is because we can then control the community. So if you're paying a premium for a gated community, you want to make sure that you have some sort of control over it, because for those of you that got HMOs, you get someone bad in and it's very hard then to appease the others without them all leaving and you just being left with the bad one. So it's that as a gated community. This area here is a mixture of office, hotel, leisure, commercial.
How many stories now?
We're trying to get some with 4, so ground, first, second, third, on the basis that we think we'll be knocked back to 3. But the other thing that we're trying to do is we're looking at doing different ways of construction. So this will be steel framed, but with insulation, and we're looking at whether it can be built off-site in warehouses and then brought to site and assembled on site. So a bit like the Hoof House and other, Scandinavian, typically those sort of things. So a different sort of look. So it'd be a very different look and feel. There's several schemes, sort of 5-6 miles away, where they're building 200-300 houses, and they are your typical brick, regular 2-bed, semis, 3-bed, the occasional 4-bed, and what have you, summer flats that everyone else sees. And what we're wanting to do is, for the same build cost, is create something that has a bit of a wow factor and also has an increased value.
Might be a way of doing it as a cheaper cost.
Say again, sorry.
Might be a way of doing that as a cheaper cost.
It could be. It could be.
There's a company I know that does school buildings that are zero. In fact, they're completely, all their energy is comes from the building itself.
definitely need to know more about that. We're back to the school again now, aren't we? But
So
they've got to be able, they've got to be able to do
School
something.
buildings, they're currently looking at expanding, catch up with me at the break.
Yeah, fantastic.
Have you spoken to the candolas?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
No, I haven't.
You're not about, you know what I mean?
Eco build, calculate
The one I was telling you about.
Oh, is this one you were
Yeah. Eco-build,
mentioning? There we go. You
yeah.
see,
Yeah.
if you're not looking in a certain direction, you don't see anything, do you? And if someone suddenly says, hey, just look over that way, and you go,
Just remember me and you will.
Dan,
Yeah.
you're making it sound like I'm going to pop my clogs before you are. I don't like it.
Confident.
So there's one thing. So I mean, it's really interesting, and I do think they've got a strip on the other side of the road, and that pet cemetery's coming back into my head, and I'm thinking they can't sell it for anything else. And they now do. Have you seen the eco burials as well, where you can be buried in wicker baskets under trees and what have you? Yeah, so I'm sure there's a market for that, surely, for pets. Eh? There you go, fabulous. Now then, before I go, so thank you very much for that. That's really helpful, and it was purely very indulgent. It was all for me, but hopefully you got something out of that. But what I want to just before I go is, has anyone seen one of these? You know what I'm going to talk about. Has Ray spoken to you about it? Yeah, he did me, and it's fantastic. It's really clever. Okay, you go online and you ask for one, and what you get is, what's that? No, it's a neat little packaging, and inside is a card, credit card. Okay, but it's a slightly different card. Has anyone seen these? No? Okay. It comes with an app. Now,
Oh, is this the augmented reality?
it's called Imagine Curve. So let me just, there we go. I'll light it up here so you can have a look. I think it is. Yeah. ImagineCurve.com. Okay? And does anyone here carry lots of business cards around with them? Different bank cards, different account cards, different credit cards, and all the rest of it. It's a bit of a pain, and what have you. On here, what you can do is you can take a photo of each of those credit cards, get it registered to this card, and whenever you want to use, I'll use my business account for that. You tap on your card on the screen. It puts its little logo on, and when you put that card into the machine, it is that other business card. It could be the greatest scam and fleecing of all your details and all your credit cards ever. You know, however, it works. I've tried it in restaurants. I have withdrawn cash at cash points.
Does it tap and click? Just 30 quid?
No, it doesn't. I don't think it has contactless on it. But for keeping your business and what have you separate, it's just absolutely fabulous. Now, the other thing is, if you make a mistake on one of your transactions, by the way, let me just have a look back here. So, when you do a transaction, you can get it to send you an email. You can also take a photo of the receipt, and you can just, if you think to yourself, oh, that's the wrong card, you can go back in time and change which card you wanted it attached to.
Within a
Does it sound
certain
like
amount of
witchcraft?
time?
Yeah.
Within a couple of hours? or?
No, within, I think you've got something like a few days to do it. So, does that sound kind of curious, interesting? Right, okay.
What if you
Well,
love that card?
You put your wife's card on it as well.